As Halloween approaches, I figured now is probably a good time to talk about something that I've seen that's kind of concerning in the Christian and the Catholic community as a whole. Now, myself, I'm Catholic, so I'm talking mostly to the Catholic point of view, but also the Christian community as a whole. So, what is going on? Well, as Halloween approaches, it's spooky season, as people say. It's the season for fear, but also witches and demons and things like that. I'm starting to see so many people so afraid of witches, and, to a great extent, demons should be definitely afraid of, but human witches and, quote, warlocks and sorcerers and things like that, almost to an unhealthy degree. Like, the best example I can think of that just popped up was there was a fairly viral video on Twitter, or maybe it was TikTok, who knows these days, of a person going through grocery stores and casting hexes and curses on candy. So when people were giving out candy, they'd be giving out that cursed candy that would then impact the children. That's basically nonsense, make-believe. It's people LARPing as something that they're not, right? People shouldn't have to fear that, and it's almost, I almost say into the borderline of scrupulosity to be afraid of that, to live your life in such fear that if someone goes to a can of beans and goes woo and says a couple words over it that it's inedible, if you can't live your life that way, right? You can't be so afraid of what these other people are doing that you're not able to go to a grocery store, because you'll never truly know, right? You'll never truly know if somebody did that to the food that you're eating. Now, it's not to say don't check your food, right? People do, well, okay, so this is a subtopic, people do poison candy and stuff like that. There's not a whole lot of actual reported cases of people poisoning candy and things like that. The most famous reported cases on it are actually of parents doing that to their own children just to prove that it happens. Kind of one of those, this isn't happening, so I'm going to do it to prove that it does happen. That logic doesn't necessarily track, but that's a subtopic, But, you're never going to know if somebody, especially from TikTok or, Twitter, came in and did something like cast a spell over the food or anything like that, right? That's nothing to be afraid of. But on the flip side, there are so many Christians and, again, Catholics who aren't afraid of the things that they should be afraid of, right? You live in fear of somebody casting spell over your SpaghettiOs, but you're not afraid to miss church and be in mortal sin. You're not afraid to, only go on Easter and maybe Christmas. The things that are actually dangerous to us, God has given us the 10 Commandments and other things that we know are harmful to us. That is what sin is, right? Sin is damaging or severing that relationship between us and God. That's real. That's the things we should be afraid of. So it just seems kind of like a great irony to me that people are so afraid of things that are make-believe or can't hurt them, but have no fear of the things that actually are bad for them, the things that actually can hurt them. And I know this is going to be unpopular across, the sects of Christianity, say, I don't need to go to church, I can be religious without going to the church. Well, the church is important. And I think the best example of that, actually, I now have a saved video for a proof of why the church is important. A man was speaking on an experience he had with his, I believe they were Protestant, but it might have been evangelical church, that essentially his pastoral advice that was given to him because he wanted to be a pastor, and they believe you have to be married to be a pastor because, kind of creepy or something if you're not, which, again, that's a whole nother video, that's a whole nother topic, right? So he asked his pastor, how can I help to find a wife? And the advice basically boiled down to go buy the outfit that you want your wife to wear, and then, pray over it and say, God, I bought the clothes, I bought the clothes, now fill these clothes with a woman, find the right woman for me. And many people rightfully are saying, well, that's basically spellcasting in itself, right? That's a form of manifesting, right? Manifest what you want is a very, very popular ideology in a lot of different forms of other religions. So why do you need the church? Because you need the church to keep people from doing that. People think they can interpret the Bible, but it's such an ancient book with millions of subtext and other things that are important to it, you can't as a just regular layperson understand all of it, right? You need the church to keep people in line and keep pastors in line, because you can go online and get a pastoral degree, and a lot of those colleges aren't accredited. There's no universal kind of system to it, so you don't know that the information that you're getting is correct. So we need the church to help us with that, and we need to go to church to learn these things. So again, it's the irony of this person can hex my Snickers bar and that somehow will harm me, but not going to church, not reading the Bible, not being godly. People have been wagging their fingers at Christians for as long as I can remember, but in the age of social media, it's even more so, right? More so of the, why are so many Christians mean? Why is the after church crowd so awful? Why are there so many people who, as soon as they leave church, they immediately go to a restaurant, they don't tip, they treat people poorly, they don't treat them with compassion and love, they're judgmental, and they're often rude and awful? That's a problem. You're afraid of eating a cursed Snickers bar, but you're not afraid to be rude to the waitstaff. You're not afraid to not give generously, to not give alms to those in need. That's a problem. Which one of those is really going to affect you? Say for a second even that the cursed tin of candy is real. We'll pretend. Say that it is real and that it does curse you and you get sick. We get sick all the time. Is a sickness really that much to be afraid of? What's more important is the immortal sickness, the sickness on our soul that needs to be cleansed, right? Those are the things that we need to be aware of. Another example I'll give was people posting online about finding witchcraft in a graveyard, and to me, it mostly looked just like litter. It was a beer can, a couple candles, things like that. And someone had said that they were so afraid of the mystical that they won't even touch tarot cards. Well, if you've been around my channel long enough, you know that I was a tarot card reader for the longest time, and I've left that life behind to pursue Catholicism. But they're not some great mystical device that if I touch the tarot card, my skin's gonna burn. It's not gonna infuse me with demons. It's a piece of paper that someone drew on and people assign meaning to. 99% of tarot card readers aren't even like these deep mystical people performing magic. They're literally doing cold reading and psychology to take advantage of people, or they're just entertainers that are saying, this card probably means this or that. That's when I did tarot card reading, that was the number one thing I said to people was, this is entertainment only. Because I didn't truly believe that I was divining anything. I didn't believe I was talking to the other side. I was literally, these cards have a random chance of coming out in this order, these cards have this meaning, and P.S. a lot of the cards can have multiple meanings, so you can kind of, it could mean this or this to kind of play around with it, right? I didn't believe that I was truly divining anything. I believed that I was creating entertainment for people and doing cold reading and things like that. That's really nothing to be quite as afraid of. Now, I'm not saying that exorcism's not real. I'm not saying demons aren't real. I'm not saying that there aren't truly supernatural forces to be afraid of. What I'm saying is that you can't live your life in fear of all the TikTok witches and the Twitter witches. I know there's another famous example going on right now where a guy asked all the witches out there to go ahead and put a curse on him, and then he's just living his life showing that there's nothing to it. In fact, there's quite a few famous saints that have said that if witchcraft was real, we would definitely have something to be afraid of, but it's not. And I know people are going to say, what about the Salem witch trials and the churches burning witches and all that? And to that I'll say there's a lot of misinformation there. There's a lot of mythos there that really is more like Protestant propaganda rather than the truth. In fact, a lot of what the church did, and I'm not going to go into, I'm not a historian, but there's a lot of great resources out there. I definitely suggest Catholic Answers if you want the actual truth, the true history of what it is. But essentially it boils down to a lot of things around witchcraft and heresy were illegal by the state standard, not the church's standard, but the state. And so the church stepped in to try and help people in said trials, but if they couldn't be helped, they'd be handed over to the state, and the state would put through their judgments. So that has a lot more to deal with. That's not just the church, that's state laws, that's the time. There's there's a lot more to it than that. So I wouldn't say that it's fair to just say, oh, well, the church used to burn witches, so witchcraft must be real, therefore I have to live in fear in it. I don't think that's a very good line of reasoning. It also stands to reason and worth bringing up that a lot of that information is lost to the ages. If you look up like the New Age paganism, or a lot of like the neo-paganism, or North mythology is getting bigger here, a lot of those don't have like ancient texts, right? They don't have a Bible that's 2,000 years old that's been meticulously curated and watched through the ages. It's kind of just some information that someone wrote down at some point, and there you have it. There's a book on the Big Book of Demons. If you look into the Big Book of Demons, that names all the different kinds of demons and all how they prowl about the earth and all their supernatural powers. You'll see that book was written originally in like 1957, and they don't have a source, right? It was just, I wrote this down in 1957 and made it up, and now people think it's real. So definitely worth source checking or things like that. So I know I kind of rambled a little bit, got off a couple topics there, so let me bring it back home here, that the point of this video was Halloween doesn't have to be an evil time, it doesn't have to be a scary time, you don't have to live in fear of the witches, you don't have to live in fear of everything you see. My church itself, my parish, my Catholic church is running a trunk or treat for kids to come out and dress up and get candy, that they can be celebrated in a non-secular way, it can be a non-consumerism way. There is a way that you can do it as a respectful holiday, but don't live in fear of the things that don't need to be afraid of. But also keep track of what actually you should be fearing and what you should be looking out for. The point is, it's not going to be on TikTok of what you should be looking out for. It's going to be those personal sins that you're letting slide because you're too busy judging or living in fear of other things.